So we're waiting for one more. Oh, there we go. Director Boyko. So Daniel is on his way to Tofino, so I will be calling this meeting to order. And again, we have to do, it's the first meeting of the year, the election of chair and vice chair.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a minute late. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Fred. I will call to order the meeting of the Electoral Area Directors Committee for February 23rd, 2023. I'd like to recognize that we're holding this meeting in the traditional territories of the Sashat and Huipachezid First Nation. I'd also like to give notice to participants that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube on the Regional District website. As mentioned, first meeting of the year for regional district committees, we do election of chair and vice chair. So I will conduct that now. Just a quick overview of the process. Since we are doing a hybrid format for this meeting, those present in the boardroom will get a ballot to vote. And those of you online, directors online, if you could just please email me if there's an election, your vote. So on that, I should also introduce in the boardroom right now, we have Terry Fong, Chief Financial Officer, Mike Erg, General Manager of Planning and Development, and Director Susan Roth from Beaver Creek. Great, so I'm going to call for nominations for chairperson of the Electoral Area Directors Committee for 2023, a first time.
I'd like to nominate Susan Roth.
Director Roth, do you accept that nomination?
Yeah, I guess so.
Great, thank you. And we have Renee LaCoursier, alternate director for Sprout Lake, has just entered the meeting. That's okay. I'd like to call a second time for chair of the Electoral Area Directors Committee for 2023. And I'll call a third time for nominations for chair of the Electoral Area Directors Committee for 2023. Okay, there being no further nominations, I'm pleased to announce Director Roth, chairperson of the Electoral Area Directors Committee for 2023. So Director Roth, if you'd like to take the chair, would you like me to conduct the vice chair election?
Sure.
Great. Okay, perfect. So I'll call for nominations for vice chair of the Electoral Area Directors Committee for 2023, a first time.
I'd like to nominate Rob Beckett.
Director Beckett, do you accept that nomination?
Thank you for that nomination. Yes.
Great, thank you. And I will call for nominations for vice chair of the Electoral Area Directors Committee for 2023, a second time. And call for nominations a third time for vice chair. Okay, there being no further nominations, Director Beckett, congratulations. You're now the vice chair of the Electoral Area Directors Committee. Thank you. Did you just want to have as much sort of.
Okay, next we have is the approval of the agenda. Was there any additions to the agenda? Not seeing any. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda? So it's moved by Bob Beckett, seconded by Fred Boyko. Or sorry, moved to second. All in favor? Motion carried. Okay, so the minutes from Electoral Areas Directive Committee meeting held November the 3rd. Is there any errors or omissions or discussion on these minutes? Would someone like to move that the minutes be adopted or received? Moved by Beta, seconded by Fred Boyko. All in favor? Motion carried. forgot to ask for discussion. Okay, request for decisions. So the annual review electoral area directors committee terms of reference. So everyone had a chance to go through them. Is there any changes or anything they'd like to recommend for the terms of reference? Or any discussion? Could I get in? Oh, sorry, Director Boyko. I think you're muted, Fred.
Sorry, I have two questions and two items. Do you want to do it line item by line item? Because I think there's 4 items, I believe, right? Yeah, so there's building inspection, there's electoral area administration, management and development rural areas, and the Vancouver Island Regional Library. Do you want to go through each one single line by line, or how do you want to do it?
That's the next thing that we're doing. We're just right now one above it at the electoral areas committee terms of reference. So we're on number 5 on the agenda. Okay. So can we get a motion to approve the terms of reference? Or to receive? Moved by Beta. Yeah, seconded by Bob Beckett. All in favor? Motion carried. Okay, now we're at the request for decisions. 2023-27 draft financial plan. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. So what we'll do is we'll go through each of these individually. We'll give a little brief summary, kind of what we provided on the February 9th Committee of the Whole, and then have an opportunity for the directors to ask any questions, make any changes, and then we're just asking that the directors pass a motion to say that it's ready for the draft bylaw. So this doesn't mean you can't make changes moving forward if something else pops up, but this basically gives staff an indication that we're getting close on these budgets. So we will start with building inspection, and I will share the screen, and then I'll get Mr. Erk to speak to it.
Hi, everybody. So just we'll start with building inspection. I just have a brief overview, similar to what we presented when we did this for the entire board. But again, building inspection seeing a really high level of activity in 2022. We had 127 building permits issued for a value of $27.3 million. I would note that our building inspectors also enforce the building bylaw when there's building bylaw infractions. We have been utilizing the notice on title process. So that's when somebody has either started construction without a building permit or hasn't called for inspections and is basically building contrary to the building code and or our building bylaw. There's an opportunity to place a notice on title. So that notice on title just identifies to anybody that say if there's a future sale or if there's mortgage lending required, that there's building infractions or building permits that were not finalized. I do want to note when we go through that process, I mean, the first step is HRD staff always provide the property owner to an opportunity to bring the situation into compliance. So say, for example, if a building has started without a building permit, they're given an opportunity to make an application, and move forward with the building inspection. And again, if inspections aren't called for and constructions, continued beyond the point where an inspection is needed, again, the property owners provided an opportunity to rectify the situation before we take any sort of action. And then there is a formal process where the owners are notified a number of times before it's brought to the board. The board makes a decision on whether to place a notice on title or not. I just wanted to give a little bit of an explanation around that process for all of the directors. And then also want to note that if building permits are started without a building permit, the fees portion of the building bylaw requires that the building permit fees are doubled, because that's really around cost recovery, because there's a lot more work involved for staff and our building inspectors specifically when a permit or when an application or building has started without a building permit. So they've often gone well into the construction and need to verify the building meets code. And I mentioned before, and we're moving forward. We did amend the building permit fees, and I think probably for permits starting in about May last year, so about half the year, maybe a little bit more, we saw the change in revenue through that process, and staff are recommending for 2023 that we leave the fee structure the way it is within the building service, and then monitor that and follow up in 2024 with the board to consider any changes that may need to happen to the fee structure. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll let Harry carry on.
Sure. I was just going to add that this tax requisition does drop by approximately 19,000 this year. So that really is showing that the service fees that are put in through the building permit are starting to support the costs of the service. Obviously, we don't control how many building permits come in the door. So that is a little bit of there's always a little bit of risk to the assumptions that we make, but we do try to be conservative with our revenue estimates just because it is development driven, and all indications lead that nothing's slowing down in our rural areas of this region. So happy to answer any questions, and I'll stop sharing so we can see everybody.
Okay, Fred, did you have questions?
Yes, I just have one quick question on this one. So we have a large surplus that is affecting things, and you are, for the 2024 budget, you're predicting zero surplus, but that might change when we actually get to that point, Terry?
Yes, for sure. So again, we are quite conservative in what our revenues are going to be through the building permit process. So it's not that I budget for a surplus. I don't want to say it that way, but I don't ever want to overestimate what our revenues are and have a situation where we need to catch up in the following year. So we are fairly confident that that budget line item for revenue of building permits is going to be exceeded, creating the surplus again next year. That would base on activity though in the area.
Thank you very much. I have one question for Mike. The labor and benefits is predicted to climb substantially more than inflation over the next 3-4 years. Are we planning on adding staff, or is that just general costs of the employees going up? Thank you.
So I'm just trying. So part of that will be there's a couple of proposed resource changes for this year. A partial year of a administrative assistant that will be focused on supporting this department. Also, there is a proposal for a junior planner position that would also have some time allocated towards the service, but because those aren't currently in use, the rest of the impact will be felt in 2024.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Bob, did you have a question?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. So from an economic development standpoint, and looking to the remainder of 2023 and 2024, if in fact we do see a bit of a downturn in the economy, I'm just wondering, how do we stack up with respect to the fees with Port Alberni, and probably more importantly, what is the time frame for approving permits, especially commercial and industrial? And so I'm asking the question through the chair to Mike, more with a lens on how do we attract people to come to our communities and build, and what are we doing to ensure that we recognize that that is part of economic development? And last but not least, sorry, I'll just throw this one in as well, is at what point in time do you think the building inspection function will be cost neutral based on revenue from fees? Thank you.
So thanks, Director Becker. I'll start with the comparison specifically to the city of Port Alberni, because that's the one I'm the most familiar with. Our fees right now are higher than the city of Port Alberni, but I do know that they're working on adjusting and sort of bringing them into comparison. When we adjusted our fees in the last year, I did talk with city of Port Alberni staff. With respect to the turnaround time on building permit applications, and I'm just going to qualify my answer by saying this is when we get a complete building permit application. So we often get applications and there are things missing that the building inspectors need before they can issue a building permit. And, so sometimes those are things like engineering, et cetera. Right now, our turnaround time, I would say, is in the 3 to 4 week range. And that's ideally where we want to shoot for. I mean, in a perfect world, we're issuing a building permit in 2 weeks, but that just often isn't realistic when things get busy, because what we find is building permits don't come in sort of evenly; they come in waves. So we have had situations where people are waiting 10 weeks for a building permit. That's something where none of us, and myself or the building inspectors, like that, and we certainly try to try to rectify that situation. There are circumstances our building inspectors will periodically work overtime, to deal with some of that through the busy times as well. So we do kind of shoot for that 4 to 6 week range as sort of at a minimum, the goal that we want to have for building permits. Certainly my understanding in talking with other areas around the province and also getting feedback from developers and builders is we do have a very quick turnaround time in relation to other areas outside of our regional district. And then the last question, I don't really I don't have an answer for when we would be cost neutral. What I would recommend, and my advice and thoughts on this are that we have a full year under our new building permit fee structure, and then review it early in 2024 to see where we're at. I mean, looking at the budget, sorry, my screen just went blank on me. We did have 189,000 and change, about 190,000 in fees come into this service last year. And again, like I said, that was only part of the year with the new fee structure. And the other thing too that I think this we want to have part of the discussion is this is a service that is primarily services the developer, the owner, the homeowner that's property owner that's building. But there is public benefit to having building inspection and making sure that the buildings are built to the minimum building code, et cetera. And there is some outreach work that we do around informing the community and things like that as well. So in March, I'm hoping to bring a report to the board, to the EA directors meeting. One of the things I want to talk about is the new step code or the energy efficiency requirements around building that the province is implementing and requiring us to do. And sort of the benefits to that, but also the impact on contractors and homeowners, et cetera. So we'll have some more opportunity to just talk about some of those specific things at that time as well. So I hope I answered all your questions. If I missed one, let me know.
Okay, Fred Boyko, do you have a comment or question?
Yes, I just had a follow-up. So with regard to building inspection timelines, I had the opportunity to sit beside the Langford mayor last week, and they're a special case, and I don't think we'd ever want to replicate what's going on there, but they're pumping the building permits in 2 days to 2 weeks right now. But I asked them how they're doing it, and they said they've thrown caution to the wind and they're trying to fix it with the new administration there. I don't think that's tenable. I don't think it's proper, but when you put in a building permit, there's a certain things you have to look at. Is the building in the right place? Do you have the engineered drawings and all this kind of stuff? From personal knowledge and some of the other constituents on Beaufort, they run into one hiccup with the building permit at some of the checkpoints, and then they have to go fix that, come back, and then the building permit keeps going through the other steps, and if they find another hiccup, then they have to come back and do it. Whether they need to do a zoning or variance or a building permit area or something, it would be good if the building permit process went through and identified all the problems at the start, so that the owner or the developer could figure out, I got to fix two different things and work on those simultaneously, as opposed to fixing one, coming back, and then finding out there's a second problem and then coming back again, because that is slowing things down. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions?
I was just going to quickly comment that, that we are working on our process, around how we're dealing with building permits, et cetera. I guess there's a couple of parts to that, because we will always, we always have a staff person available to answer planning questions. So if somebody's got creeks on their property or wants to confirm what their zoning is and what their setbacks are, et cetera, we will almost always have a staff person available to run through those things with people. When you get into things like engineering or when people dig, sometimes they're, you can't help that information. We do have a checklist that sort of goes through all of the things that people need when they submit a building permit. And again, we generally, we have staff available to help people through those, processes as well when we do that. We do spend a significant amount of time with property owners working through their building permit applications, and also before that answer questions. And that is something that takes building inspectors takes up a significant amount of their time is working through those with individuals.
Thank you, Mike.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, would someone like to move for the request for a decision? Beta? Oh, you're muted, Beta.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay. For some reason, I can't use the space bar anymore. I don't know why. So I would like to move that the Electoral Area Directors Committee recommend the building inspection proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023 to 2027 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
And do we have a seconder? Fred Boyko? Any other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor? Motion carried.
Okay. Up next is the Electoral Area Administration Service. So I'll just talk about this first part, and then I'll throw up the projects that are with the Canada Community Building Fund after. So this service has the funding to enable the electoral area directors to attend UBCM and AVICC and those types of conventions as the municipalities send their directors from their organizations themselves. It also will have the funding for the by-election for Cherry Creek. It, in addition to that, has a small pot of funding for each director. They're usually around $1,000, I think. But each director, if you want to do mail outs to your community or some sort of engagement, please reach out to staff and we can help you with that. I know Director Cote does quarterly mail outs to her community through that fund. So that money right there is charged individually to your area for whatever you use. A big chunk of this money, which is 100% grant funded, is the Canada Community Building Funds, which were called the Community Works Funds, have also been called the Gas Tax Funds. So staff are still using those terms interchangeably. This money is administered by UBCM. It's from the federal government. And we have quite a range of projects that you can do with that. They have asked that a majority of this money be spent by March 2024, as they are in the process, the province is in the process of renegotiating more money for the next section of the agreement with the federal government. So we're really trying to focus on projects that we think we can actually get some money spent this year. We do it in two groups. We have a group of projects that are for outside organizations. So this year, these are all carryover projects from prior years. They include Sprout Lake Community Hall Association upgrade to the hall itself. They still have about $62,000 remaining in our agreement with them to do hall upgrades. The Sprout Lake Community Association also had some funding to do a multi-purpose court upgrade. This is substantially completed, but there's a little bit of work still to be done once the weather gets better and if it ever warms up out there to finish that multi-purpose court. The Beaver Creek Community Club had a hall upgrade last year to add a washroom facility, but they're also finishing up some upgrades to the internal part of the hall. So they have just over $8,000 remaining. And then we have $600,000 allocated to Cherry Creek Waterworks District for a construction of a new fire hall. Spoke with Chief Banton, and they are trying to find their other portion of their funding. They have some money in reserves, but are going to need to do some borrowing. So they're talking about doing a referendum for borrowing in their community this year before they can proceed. So he's supposed to be keeping me up to date on those. I am just going to share my screen. If I can do that from here, that will be probably amazing. So that we can talk about all these other ones. So we built this year off of a 5-year plan that we developed last year. We kind of did a more comprehensive approach to this. I'm just going to see if I can move this over. All right. So staff pretty much built it off of everything that was approved in the 2022 plan. We rolled over funds that have not been spent yet and then allocated the projects. There's approximately $3.6 million available at the beginning of this year. We are anticipating getting another $524,000 during the year. So the projects for 2023 include a Banfield Centennial Park playground upgrade. So this was on our plan last year. However, it was supposed to be done in 2025, but the results of the Municipal Insurance Association's risk assessment of that playground has bumped up the urgency. There's a lot of safety challenges with this existing park. So we've just moved, we haven't increased the amount, we've just moved the amount to 2023. The Banfield Development Plan for $100,000. This work is going to be done this year, but is also subject to another grant application. You're going to hear those words from me a few times. There's a few of these because they're package ready projects that we have put in grant applications for. So that this funding will become available if we're successful in that other grant. Banfield Liquid Waste Management, we have a consultant undertaking that work, and we have $145,000 remaining in that. Banfield Water System upgrades, there's a couple of chunks of money. This $360,000 is remaining from a previous allocation, and then there's an additional $500 next year. We're still awaiting that announcement from another submarine line grant application to figure out what we're doing with this funding moving forward, however significant needs in this system. I'm only going to talk about the 2023 projects at this time, but we're happy to answer questions on the others. The Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department has $350,000 for a fire hall upgrade budgeted this year. That's to address some safety concerns of that building to meet the new WCB standards, but also to improve accessibility, as it is a great community hall but has no elevator. Accessibility-wise is kind of a challenge. It's still in the design phase, lots of work still to be done on that one. The Cherry Creek Maplehurst Access Development, $240,000 on that project. This project, I believe, is designed and hoping to get started this year. We're waiting for some permits. Staff did add a climate action plan development into this year. So we received some money from the province, and this is to achieve our part in the Clean BC 2030 plan. There are more and more grant applications are requiring that we have a climate action plan, which we do not have. So not only will this meet a requirement of getting climate money from the province, it may also open up many other opportunities to grant funding for us moving forward. The electoral area official community plan development. The plan is to redo all 6 electoral area official community plans in the coming years. And so this would be some money to help support that, both from a staff perspective and consultants. This is subject to a grant application as well, which I'm thinking we should be hearing about soon. A GIS system for asset management capacity building. So implementing GIS from an asset management perspective is kind of our next major step in our asset management program. And that would be to get communication from the field into the finance world and operations. So we have received a grant for some work to be done in the Beaver Creek water system. And we've decided to start with that one. It's one of the services we have the most comprehensive data with. So I thought it was a great place to start. So we will be leveraging some of this money, but also have received other grant funding to support this project. There are ongoing water upgrades to the Long Beach Airport. They had a federal grant last year to do some upgrades to the actual lines in the ground. They need some upgrades to the pump house and the pumps themselves to meet higher flow. We have grant applications going out for that project, but this is just some additional community building fund money that would support that project. Parks and trail signage. So we have a parks and trail signage guideline that is near completion, just working on some consultation. And the plan would be then to put in some parks and trail signage that's kind of consistent across our community and regional parks, and hoping to get going on that this year. And from a park standpoint, we're also working on some park management plans. We had planned on starting this last year, but received some grant money for the log train trail management plan. So I've started with that one, and we'll be moving through those plans for both our regional and community amenities over the coming years. Spirit Lake Fire Department, we allocated $500,000 to an expansion of hall number 3, which is the Harold Bishop Fire Hall, next to the shop market. This $500,000 is not close to being enough for what they need to actually do this hall. However, we have a strategic priority fund grant application in for that project at this time and are waiting to hear on that. Otherwise, we'll be coming back with discussion on this fire hall. And finally, we have $731,000 or $32,000 allocated towards the West Coast multi-use path, and that will be to use in conjunction with our iced tea grant and our newly announced provincial grant to get that project completed. So lots of projects on the table this year, hoping that the construction prices allow us to get some of them done. They're not all infrastructure, obviously, but happy to answer any questions. And I will stop sharing for now, but if we need to pull this chart back up, I can definitely do that.
Thank you. Director Sega, you have a question?
I do. Thanks. I know this question shouldn't be going to Terry. It should be probably going to Eddie, but I'm wondering, the source of the water at the Tofino Airport, is that wells, and are they old wells? Or is that Jenny? Okay, sorry.
No, through the chair, I'd be happy to answer that for you. Yeah, so at the Long Beach Airport, we do have wells there. We have wells, we draw water in, and then we treat that water. It is high in a lot of dissolved minerals, so we do an ion exchange treatment system there currently. We're looking at different servicing options for full build out, but right now that is the water system.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Beckett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to acknowledge staff's efforts and work with respect to Centennial Park and moving up the grant to address the safety concerns, in the playground. That playground is one of the saddest playgrounds I've ever visited. And to have the safety concerns addressed, and more importantly, to get some equipment in there for the residents, the children, and the visiting children. The community really appreciates moving that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? No. Director Boyko?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I know it's on your 2024 budget, Terry, but the Great Central Lake boat launch and parking. The reason I'm asking a question about that is they recently filled in the access for the boat launch at the old Boy Scout camp. And now people that want to go there have to wait at least another year or two before they want to actually launch their boat. Is that boat launch going in the same place or somewhere else? Thank you.
I'm hoping for Jenny's face. Oh, there she is.
Yeah, I was just, honestly, I'd like to get back to you on that with some more details, if you don't mind, Director Boyko. I can give you an update on what that project looks like, what our timeline is. I don't feel confident giving you details. I'm afraid I might not have the full story, but I'll touch base with Michael and let you know.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's just in the last 2 weeks they actually filled in the old boat launch with a bunch of rocks, and there's a lot of comments online that people are not happy about that. Second question. I just wonder if you could elaborate more on the climate action plan development. So I'm on the Clean BC website and it basically mentions electrifying everything. With the power outages and things like that, a lot of us have generators as backups and wood. Is that going to hinder this process, or are we? I'm just wondering what the plan is. Thank you.
I can take it. So it's a community engagement process that would then develop a bit of a plan of how we want to move forward to meeting the targets that have been set out by the province. We haven't, as staff, spent a whole lot of time yet deciding. Part of the reason why is climate, if you look at our strategic priorities, actually isn't even on the strategic priority list. However, the province's mandates or their approach is kind of making us talk about this a little bit more. So we're not completely sure what it is. It is a community engagement process. We do get to set what those targets are, but we need to have some targets that move us in alignment with what the Clean BC 2030 is looking at. I do believe some of that will be electrification of our fleet potentially, but just other examples of things that have kind of come at us from all different angles is there's been some requests for charging stations, public charging stations for vehicles in brownfields. And we don't have a service, or we haven't even really had that discussion in terms of public charging here at all. Other regional districts have proceeded with that. So it's kind of trying to get a whole bunch of those ideas kind of collected, and so that we're not making decisions blowing in the wind, and that we have a little bit more of a strategic plan of how we're going to approach. Definitely director input and community input involved in developing that plan.
Thank you very much, Terry. Yeah, I know with the new F-150 Lightnings, to charge them up takes multiple hours and about $100 in electricity. So having the public pay for that might be a bit of a stretch. Thank you.
And I was just going to add, because I think the climate action and what you were talking about, Director Boyko, around backup generators. There's a couple of components. There's a climate action work that we're doing, but there's also the step code requirements in new builds, and we will be bringing a report within a month to the EA directors around some of those changes as they relate to the building bylaw and the building code requirements as well. So I mean, they are related, but there's also some separation in some of those things. Because the climate action is something that we have some options around doing, and some of the step code is things that the province is mandating that we implement through our building bylaw and building code.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. I look forward to the report.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I have one. Maplehurst Park. Is there a way of putting that a year down the road? I have a lot of people from Willow Road that have contacted me, and even yesterday I got a phone call about it, and we really don't want it to happen. So I know it's a Cherry Creek endeavor, but it affects the people in Beaver Creek, and I hate to push it or to approve it or without allowing them a chance.
Jenny, I'll let you take that one. You're more in depth on that project.
Yeah, through the chair, if I may, I'd like to keep the money in this year. So we are looking to, once we have the Cherry Creek director in place, we'd like to review the plan, the park management plan, and the process that we undertook to review the recommendations of the board and confirm that we're still on board with moving forward with that. But I think the benefit of keeping the money in the 2023 year is that if the project doesn't proceed, we can always let it roll over to next year. But if we do push it forward, there's no way to actually get that started this year if we need to. So I think having the money allocated in the 2023 year is still a safe move forward, knowing that, we still have work to do, quite a bit of work to do before anything happens there. I hope that explains that and addresses the concern.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with any questions? Oh, Director Boyko?
I'm pointing on my screen to Director Beckett. I think he's had his hand up for the wall.
Sorry, Director Beckett. I couldn't see it through the light.
Thank you, Director Boyko. My mistake. I needed to lower my hand. I apologize.
No problem. I'm just pointing at you on my screen, which has no relevance to anybody else.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion? Director Beckett?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make the motion that the Electoral Area Directors Committee recommend the Electoral Area Administration proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2027 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Seconded by Director Sega. All in favor? Motion carried.
Yeah, thanks. So I will run through the rural planning introduction, and then I'm sure Terry and I will combine to answer and others answer any questions directors have. So just a quick recap of the management of development or rural planning. It covers part 14 of the Local Government Act, and it talks about, it's our zoning bylaw, development applications, etc. Our advisory planning commissions, etc., all fall with public hearings that fall under that. And I think we can go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. I also meant to mention it is electoral area directors only, except when when a development application or something we're doing a plan applies to Clayoquot Sound. Then the District of Tofino does pay for a vote in that on those. Only on those applications that are in the Clayoquot Sound or the biosphere area. And this slide just talks about the types of applications we deal with. I think we've seen a lot of them come through now. I do want to mention the Board of Variance. It is something. It's a separate board that all local governments that have zoning bylaws have to have, and we also have to provide a fund for that. So that's based on the Board of Variance meets to deal with variance applications generally to the zoning bylaw. It can apply to other things, and they will look at things that have hardship, for example. So if there's a tree in the way, so somebody wants to build within a setback so that the tree doesn't have to get cut down, is an example of something the Board of Variance can look at. Those applications can also be dealt with through development variance, which is this board that deals with that, and generally, that's the route people people choose to go. But we are required to have a Board of Variance, and when there is Board of Variance applications, HRD staff manage it. We, as staff, we do not provide recommendations to the Board of Variance. We just provide the technical support, and then the Board of Variance makes its decision, and that variance gets registered on title. There isn't a process for the area directors or the regional district board in that process. It's completely independent. So I wanted to mention that it's something that we have that we I don't think has really come across this group's plate yet. So I was just going to talk to, and we can just talk just about the number of applications. The last couple of years have been really busy. We've seen an awful lot of development applications, and from what we're seeing in 2023, we're already receiving additional development applications. And I do want to note that with the changes proposed in specifically the Squirrel Lake OCP, that there would be, we'd anticipate more development permit applications coming, because we'd be expanding the development permit area around Squirrel Lake to match the other major streams within the regional district, and we would have more development permit applications there. Thanks, Karen. When I flipped over the page, the other thing I did want to mention is so this is from about a month ago, but based on the development applications, we have both subdivision and rezoning applications that are in the queue. If all of those applications were approved, they have the potential to create an additional 137 new lots. So that relates, both to the planning function, but also to the building function, because once those lots are approved, we generally see the building permit applications sort of in 1 to 3 years for those properties as well. So just talking about priorities for 2023, and certainly from a staff perspective, and I really hope I'm hoping that the board agrees with this, and certainly that's every indication I've had, is that we complete the zoning bylaw project in the first half of the year. And certainly that's our recommendation and focus for the first half of this year. And then to start the comprehensive official community plan reviews for Long Beach and Bamfield. So Long Beach being the oldest official community plan that we have, and it dates back to 2007. And then the reason for Bamfield is just based on the road being upgraded and the anticipated changes in development pressures that Bamfield will be seeing. And then in conjunction with that, the Bamfield development plan, which would look more specifically at areas that are suitable for development, taking into account options for both the water system and the potential for the Hawaiians sewer force main that could service portions of Bamfield. So that would be that portion. We do have a number of land use contracts that have to be canceled by 2024, and that is part of our zoning bylaw project. We're required to notify the property owners, and that was done quite some time ago. And we have been working with the property owners where they have those land use contracts, and the land use contracts are site-specific zoning, basically, and we've developed specific zones in the draft zoning bylaw that would address the needs of those property owners that have those current land use contracts. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is just reviewing application fees for development. There's the planning application fees. So we will be bringing a report to an electoral area directors committee, hopefully again in March. We've got a number of things we want to look at there, but reviewing the fees and getting feedback and hopefully adjusting those fees. They haven't been adjusted for, well, it's been probably 15 years or more, and they really don't reflect the cost to the ACRD to process applications. And certainly the changes we've seen since over the last 3 years, through COVID, is the development pressures and the property values, and really in a lot of ways the development and creating a lot of wealth for the property owners. And not that we're trying to take anything, the advice is really, we just think it should be a more of a cost recovery, and that ties into the junior planner position that we've had as a temporary position for a number of years, and filled, but it is included in this budget. Thanks, Jerry. And just want to quickly just touch on bylaw enforcement because if not all, almost all of the bylaw enforcement relates to rural planning bylaws. So we do have a recently updated and developed bylaw enforcement policy. And we, as staff, bylaw enforcement staff responds to zoning and other regulatory bylaw infractions on a complaint basis. The only exception to that is short-term vacation rentals, where the board previously directed staff to monitor and address short-term vacation rentals when they do not, where they're not permitted or don't have a temporary use permit. And we do continue to do that and expect that will ramp up coming into the spring this year. In 2022, there were 58 new bylaw enforcement files opened, in addition to a lot of complaints and comments and questions we get. We do have a ticketing system that's known as a bylaw notice enforcement process. Basically, it's a ticket process, and that only applies to zoning bylaw infractions. And so we have in 2022 started utilizing that system and have issued tickets. Where we haven't issued lots of tickets, but we have. And just again for the director's information, we don't see an infraction and issue a ticket. We do contact the property owners, provide them make sure that there is a bylaw infraction, get both sides of the story, and then if the infraction isn't corrected and it's appropriate, staff have issued tickets. And I think that's the last of the slides, and I'm happy to answer questions, and Carrie will run through the budget part.
Yeah, I'll just add, so there is a significant tax increase to the service this year. Not a whole lot of change in level of service. Part of the impact is the reduction of surplus that got carried forward from the previous year. So in 2020 and 2021, we used a lot of the COVID restart funding to support these services. That COVID restart money has run out for the most part. There's 32,000 that you'll see under the appropriated surplus category at the top to support the temporary junior planner position that is currently filled. So that will help. However, a good portion of the surplus was spent in this past year. So a couple of things. There is the extra junior planner position resource that will have a tax impact that has been added to the service this year. The other components, there's some project expenses going through there. Those are grant funded. And then we haven't overly estimated, because we haven't had the discussion with the board about what you want to do with rates and how we want to address rates and what the impact of that will be on this calendar year. We've been conservative with the estimate of our sales of service in case those don't proceed. So if the board were to be able to act quickly, like if staff's able to get that report to them quickly about what our proposed rates are, and we're able to get that passed in the first half of the year, then you'll see some increased revenues for sure for 2023. And happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions? Oh, Director LaCoursier. LaCoursier.
Very good, thank you. I do have a question. I'm just looking at the budget, and it says the line 260 project expenses, and there's 150,000. What new projects have we started here?
Yeah, so there's two projects that are funded with that Canada Community Building Fund. So there's 100,000, which is the Banfield Development Plan. And then the 50,000 is for the official community plan updates. And I believe the plan is to start with Banfield and Long Beach in 2023. So that will have an offsetting revenue in there of grant funding or transfer of community works funds or Canada Build funds of the 150 as well, as those will be supported by that money.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. Director Boyko?
I actually had the exact same question. Thank you for asking that. I got two other questions though. With the LiDAR updates, There's still concern from the residents that this will be used as a surveillance tool for the farmers, because that was put forward with satellite mapping and stopped by the BC government in 2019. But because we're projecting that this will not just happen once, it'll be an ongoing thing, they are concerned about that. Second thing is the City Views software update GIS. Will that be made public that people can use it? The reason I'm asking is, let me just bring it up here. I don't like always comparing ourselves to other districts now. Cowichan has GIS system that you can just zoom in and do a lot more things with the mapping than our current system does in the ACRD. Are we thinking that the public will get some kind of access to that too? Thank you, Mike.
Yes, I'll answer those questions. So back, I'll do the GIS first. Yes, we are just in the process of finalizing the work for, it's called IMAP. So we're working with the Comox Valley Regional District, who will host IMAP, and it will be an interactive GIS system. So for example, right now we have it set up with our planning information, so you will be able to click on, for example, your property or a property, and it'll zoom in. You'll see it'll highlight what the zoning is, etc. So it'll be much more interactive. Right now, it's a very static PDF map on our website. So we are doing that, and that is part of the GIS update that we're doing. So as soon as it's ready, we will be doing a demonstration for the board as well. So yeah, that is coming soon, early this year. And then with respect to the LiDAR, again, we had talked about. I'll go back to the enforcement. So enforcement is as per the board's policy, and the board can change or set different policies around enforcement. It's currently on a complaint basis, with respect to the LiDAR and the having mapping that's updated on a regular basis. Right? And right now we haven't had anything that's consistently updated throughout, say, for example, the Alberni Valley since 2012. So we have some mapping from 2018 that was done that covers a portion of the regional district from when we did the flood mapping project. But having consistent and regularly updated imagery and LiDAR is certainly very useful and helpful as a planning tool. We would also be sharing that on our IMAP system so that it's available for the public. And I mean, there may be instances where it would be used for enforcement, based on complaints we had. One of the things I do want to note specifically about concerns coming, if they're coming from farmers or the agricultural industry, is as we've made a number of some changes to the need when you need a building permit, or when you don't need a building permit, if you're a farm. So if you're a farm property with farm status in the ALR, building a low occupancy building, you don't need to have a building permit. We've certainly, through our zoning bylaw project, proposed, I think in all areas of keeping of animals and setbacks for farm buildings, we've expanded or increased the number of animals people are allowed on their property, and reduced the setbacks and things like that for farm buildings from side yards as well. We do have development permit areas around streams and riparian areas. Most agriculture uses are exempt from those development permit areas. But these are certainly things that we can, having imagery, can assist in making sure that the environment in those riparian areas are protected. We can monitor changes, both man-made and natural changes that are occurring within the built-up and developed area. So it's something we have had, and as the technology's advanced over time, we've gotten better imagery and better LiDAR, but it's something we have had and utilized within the regional district. I guess the air photos going back to the creation of the regional district. We actually have the air photo sheets that we can utilize and pull out, but having the computer imagery and the LiDAR now, it's something that we have utilized for a number of a long time, actually almost as long as I've been here. So hopefully that answers your questions, Director Boyko, and if not, I can elaborate further.
Oh, that sounds great, Mike. I don't know if everyone knows what LiDAR is and what it's capable of, but you basically fly it on a plane and you can see through vegetation to what ground is underneath. We use it for identifying road paths and things like that through mountains and things. But if someone magically puts up a greenhouse, you can detect it very quickly because it is not vegetation. Second thing, with the GIS mapping. So last night I had a complaint from a constituent that has a neighbor that's doing something on Crown land they shouldn't be doing. And I had to go through 5 different maps and the ACRD website, BC mapping, to figure out it's Crown property and they're not allowed to do it. But having that all in one place is going to be awesome. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, Director Lacousier.
I have a quick question. I don't know if I heard you correctly, Mike, but farm buildings don't need building permits. Did I hear that right?
Yes, if the property has farm status, and it's a low occupancy building. So if it's, for example, a hay barn and it's under a certain square footage, and it's a fairly substantial size, then they still need to be billed to the National Building Code, but they don't need to come and get a building permit for us. And again, we encourage any farmer, to contact us, and we'll clarify if it's a high occupancy or low occupancy building, but barns, dairy sheds, things like that would not require a building permit from the regional district.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I have one. With the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act or any other privacy legislation, does it talk about LiDAR?
That's not something that I'm aware of. I do know the province also, in a lot of instances, makes LiDAR type, and imagery available publicly, over private lands. That may be Wendy may be able to better answer that question.
Yeah, we'd have to look into that. I mean, if the definitely if it shows a person in there, but yeah, we'd have to look into that. I know that's like built if there's drawings of the interior in the building that can be protected as well for safety concerns, but I'm not sure about property. But we could look into that further. Yeah.
Thank you. Director Sega, I can't see if you have your hand up. You have it up? Oh, okay. Is there any other questions? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion? Sorry, Director Boyko?
Yeah, I'll put for the motion. Thank you, Chair, that the Electoral Area Directors Committee recommend the management of development rural areas proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023-2027 Alberta Claycott Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Director Sega? Any more discussion? All in favor? Motion carried.
Okay, last up is the Vancouver Island Regional Library. So the Vancouver Island Regional Library is governed by the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board. We have one director who is appointed to that board to sit on our behalf. I'm just going to share their budget at a glance. So this isn't really a budget we have control over. They basically set their budget, and then their budget is apportioned amongst all the Vancouver Island Regional Library members, 50% on the basis of population and 50% on the basis of land and improvements. So our increase this year is 9.1%. That is an impact of our share of the total cost has gone up as our assessed values have gone up in a greater way than the other areas. And then also they have increases in their budget as well. So they have said that this year's levy change per capita is $3.44. Approximately 48% of their budget is on the basis of wages. And then they break down the others between library materials at 10%, projects are 7%, branch costs are 9%. So they have provided some statistics as part of their overall budget. And it says that the library card holders receive approximately $650 in annual value each year. So happy to answer what limited answers I have on this service. And unfortunately, Director Cote is not here because she actually has more in-depth knowledge about what's all in this financial plan and what their vision is, but happy to answer questions, or I can bring them back on the 8th when Director Cote is back.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Director Beckett?
Thank you. Through the chair to Terry, and I appreciate your comment about it's not an ACRD budget and you may not have the information. Just before I pose the question, the amount that we end up paying is partially based on our property assessment. Is that correct?
Okay, so from a library standpoint itself, when you're talking Vancouver Island Regional Library, they take their total budget and they divide it between all the regional districts that are participants, 50% on the basis of population, 50% on land and improvements. When we get to our regional district and what like our 513,000 or 559,000 that we're apportioning this year, our establishing bylaw does the whole thing on the basis of land and improvements. So when we have that 560,000, that's now going out solely on land and improvements. We don't have a population factor to our establishing bylaw.
And forgive me if I haven't read it, but do we have, or would we be able to procure what the increases have been for the last 5 years and what's projected for the next 5 years? And the reason I ask that is I'm just concerned about a service where we have limited ability to control increases. And while they do a wonderful job with the service that they provide, there has to be accountability with respect to dollars spent per year. And I would be curious to see how they're managing and what the future holds.
Definitely. I don't know what if they have a solid 5-year plan moving forward. They only have to provide us 1 year, so I can definitely look that up. And I think it would be great if I brought this back to the committee of the whole on March 8th, because not only will Director Cote be here, but Tofino, Ucluelet, and City of Port Alberni all have reps that sit directly on the library board. And I know that the library expenses are a topic for everyone in the region, so we can bring it to that committee of the whole, and I'll bring those numbers for ours. And if I have some time, I might even see if I can get those numbers off the municipalities, because it would be kind of good to look at it from an ACRD standpoint as to how much we are providing to that service.
Director Sega, and then
I'm comfortable with moving the budget as presented in this meeting, simply because it's probably not going to change no matter what information we get. Just a comment.
thank you. Director Lacousier.
I'm interested in the basis we assess the library fees. The province or whoever it is allocates it by 50% by population and 50% by assessment. Why wouldn't we do the same?
So whenever you create a service at a regional district level, the participants who create the service determine what the cost apportionment method is. Way back in the day, it was set as landed improvements. It is our base for majority of taxation for many of our services. Probably 2010, 2011, shortly after I got this position. So yeah, 2011, we did make some progress, and there was some discussion about changing it to 50% land and improvements, 50% population. The problem is when you have an existing service and you go to change the apportionment method, there's winners and there's losers. And so in the end, you need to have, it is a change of a bylaw. So you need to have the proper voting go through. And I'm almost thinking that one, Wendy, might be 2/3 consent in order to make a change of that nature, and just couldn't get the political support to change the apportionment method of the establishing bylaw. It is something we consider when we're creating new services, like, for example, West Coast Transit on the West Coast, we actually put a population factor into that service, but it's harder to change existing bylaws to add factors than it is to create new ones. So definitely not impossible. It can be an establishing bylaw can be opened up at any point, but the participants, or a majority, if not 2/3 of the participants, I'd have to look into that, would have to agree to a change.
And that change too, I believe, would also need the approval of the Inspector of Municipalities.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Director Boyko?
Just to answer a bit of question that Director Beckett had, I pulled up their budget for this year and the next 3 years, and they're predicting 8.1% this year increase. And then magically it goes down to 4%, 2%, 2%, 2% for the future is what they're predicting. So I'll have to go back and see what they've done in the past and if those expectations are correct. But they say they've had a lot of expenses increase, but 90% of their costs are fixed costs. So it's a little bit contradictory on their plans and their budgets, but it is what it is. We can't do nothing about it at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion? Director Lecousier?
I'll make the motion that the electoral area director committee recommend the Vancouver Island Regional Library proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023-2027 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Thank you. Seconder? Director Sega seconded. Any other discussion on the motion? Director Beckett?
Thank you. I am going to support this motion, but I still would like to have that data provided at the next possible opportunity.
Whoops. Thank you. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Motion carried. Thank you. Director Beckett, would you like to make a motion to that effect?
Absolutely, my pleasure. That the Electoral Area Directors Committee recommend the Vancouver Island Regional Library proposed budget as presented be included in the first reading of the 2023-2027 Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan bylaw.
Actually, I think what we were asking was a motion to get more information that you were talking about.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. I would like to make the motion that the Electoral Area Directors Committee request staff to procure budgeted information as discussed. And I'm hoping that Terry and Wendy can help craft this a little bit better for the next possible meeting.
Sure. I think you're looking for the direct staff to provide the tax requisition impacts over the last 5 years, including a projection over the next 5 for discussion at committee of the whole.
That's, yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Director Sega seconded the motion. Any more discussion? All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. So now we've covered all the 4 different areas for decision. So we'll move to reports, and it doesn't look like there are any. No late business. No, the question period. Do you have anybody from the public?
Madam Chair, we do not have any attendees online and no emails were received at responses@acrd.bc.ca.
Thank you. So then we're at the point where we need a motion to adjourn. Oh, look, everybody, no. Director Sega moved to adjourn and we seconded by Director Boyko. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Thank you,
Have
everyone.
a wonderful week, everybody. Thanks for your attention.
Bye.
Good meeting. Thank you.